Before we move ahead in these lessons, it might be helpful to think about what we mean by student engagement. After all, that's the point of these lessons. How do we increase student engagement? Well, engagement is not just keeping the students busy. Students can be working and working hard, but not be engaged in the lesson. After all, we're all familiar with the term busy work. Students can be working feverishly for the entire class period, but can have their minds on something besides your learning objective. You can make the students copy spelling words 20 times each, for example, and the students can work hard at that and not think about what they're doing. They can turn their brains off and mindlessly copy words. Engagement is not just seeing that all the students are on task. You can give them a worksheet to fill out, and they can all work on that and not on other things, and they can be mentally out to lunch. Let's say your worksheet is a bunch of fill-in-the-blank questions from the reading selection in the history book. All they have to do is skim over the text to find sentences that are similar to the fill-in-the-blank questions, and then copy the right words in the blanks. They don't have to know what the text means. They don't have to know what the words mean. Just find what fits in the blank. Students can do this while they're thinking about last night's episode of 24 or the upcoming UGA football game. That's not engagement. So what is engagement? Well, it involves the use of the student's mind, particularly his working memory. Now, a little overview of how the thinking mind works. We have working memory, which is where we consciously process our thoughts. This is what you're conscious about, what you're thinking about, what's in your mind right now. When you think about how to solve a math problem, you're using your working memory. When you read, you use working memory to comprehend what you read. Now, how does stuff get into your working memory? Two routes. One is from sensory memory. This is everything that comes in through your five senses. Now what happens is that your brain filters out a lot of what comes in through your senses, or you'd go nuts. There are always sounds and sights. There's a clock ticking, a refrigerator running, a bird chirping outside, the air conditioner running, light coming through the window, a car going down the street outside the window. All of these things we're generally not conscious of. If you were, you would literally have sensory overload. The only time you become aware of these things is if something different happens, or if you have some reason to notice them. For example, I don't hear the air conditioner running unless it starts making an unusual sound, or if the custodian asks me if it's running. In those cases, I move that sense perception into my working memory. As teachers, the lectures we give, the videos we project, the decorations in the classroom, the textbooks we ask the students to read, all these are going into their sensory memory. Whether it gets into their working memory is something we'll talk about in a future lesson. Now, the second way information gets into working memory is from our permanent memory. We recall a phone number, a person's name, the date of Pearl Harbor, and other things. These are all stored in our permanent memory, and we bring them out of storage into working memory as we need them. Now, what does this have to do with engagement? Our goal as teachers is that the students will be filling their working memory with our lesson, that they'll concentrate that part of their thinking on the material of the lesson. They'll pay attention to the things we present them through their sensory memory. Will relate those things to material that's already in their working memory and in their permanent memory, and will process those two in their immediate working memory. That's what engagement looks like, and the rest of our lessons will involve ways that we as teachers can increase the likelihood of engagement. Now that last phrase is important, increase the likelihood of engagement. We cannot guarantee that all students will be totally engaged in every lesson all the time. No matter what we do, there's going to be some students where the lights are on and no one's home, students who are a few fries short of a Happy Meal. Not every lesson is going to be totally engaging. Some lessons are just more interesting than others. And some students are naturally going to engage with some lessons more than others. But we're going to be talking about things we can do as teachers to increase engagement. Now, as we go through these lessons, I don't want to make excuses for the students. They have a responsibility to pay attention, to work, to listen, to engage in the class, no matter what we as teachers do. So please don't interpret this or other lessons as saying anything different. If a student is zoning out, if he's daydreaming, if he's not engaged in the lesson, he's responsible for that. But we as teachers also have a responsibility to do things which encourage students to pay attention, to work, to get involved with the lesson. It's a two-way street. The teacher is responsible to do things to encourage student involvement, and the students are responsible to work and get involved. I think it's comparable to what God says in Ezekiel 3:17 through 19. Son of man, I've made you a watchman for the house of Israel. Whenever you hear a word from my mouth, you shall give them warning from me. If I say to the wicked, you shall surely die, and you give him no warning, nor speak to warn the wicked from his wicked way in order to save his life, that wicked person shall die for his iniquity, but his blood I will require at your hand. But if you warn the wicked, and he does not turn from his wickedness or from his wicked way, he shall die for his iniquity, but you will have delivered your soul. Now the prophet was responsible before God to deliver the warning to the people. If they remained in wickedness, they were judged by God. But if Ezekiel didn't warn them, they would still be judged for their wickedness, but so would he. Now, we're not talking here with teachers about warning people away from hell or that type of thing. But I think the principle is still the same. We are responsible to instruct our students using the most effective means possible. We need to do things such as which encourage and stimulate the students to engage with the lesson. If they don't engage, if they daydream, if they ignore the lesson, they're responsible for it. But if we deliver boring, uninteresting lessons, the students are still accountable for not paying attention and working, but we're also responsible for not teaching them as we should. In our next lesson, we're going to begin considering 4 key questions which deal with whether or not our students are engaged at the lesson. 4 important elements to consider when we design our lessons to help support student engagement.